Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Autoimmune Summit. Today, I am introducing CallyRae Stone. I'm going to share a little bio with you first. With over 25 years of experience in the fields of speech language pathology, human development, and neurological retraining and nutrition, she's all too familiar with her relationship with the SAD diet, Standard American Diet. Now, after years of chronic pain and infections gone wild, she found healing in the strangest places, food. In 2011, she sold her private practice and began a new journey from surviving to thriving with an autoimmune disease. By the way, she also has her own podcast called Living Wow Out Loud, Thriving with Autoimmune Disease. So thank you, Callie, for doing this with me.
Thank you so much for having me, Adrienne. I am really excited to share this information with your audience and be a participant in the Autoimmune Summit.
Well, I'm so happy you're here because you have quite a journey. And with you sharing what happened to you, there's a lot of people that are going to get some tidbits of knowledge and some information on how they can help themselves. So how did your journey start for you? Like, what kind of symptoms did you experience in the beginning? And what were you doing then? So what year did this all start?
Well, it actually, so the part where I actually realized I was on the autoimmune highway started in 2011. But after receiving my diagnosis, I realized that I'd actually had systemic lupus since 99, 2000. That winter was the first time I actually had some symptoms. And predating that, when I was 25, I actually was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Back then, rheumatoid arthritis was considered a degenerative disease rather than an autoimmune disease. And so I really didn't identify at all with autoimmune. It wasn't really a thing back then. So yeah, what actually happened was, do you want me to share kind of the
Yes,
journey?
Please. Yes, share your story.
Yeah, I kind of, like I said, I stumbled into this this autoimmune journey, and really, so as I was coming into my 40th birthday, I realized that I needed to make some changes because I was overweight. I had chronic pain from the rheumatoid arthritis. Nothing had really relieved that, but my family history had a lot of stroke, heart attack, early death. And I just knew that if I didn't do something, I was going to have either a short life or a very poor quality of life based on my family history. And at that time, I did have a private practice, and I was a young mom. So I had a lot going on. And I was introduced to capsules of food. And so when I was introduced to Juice Plus, I started taking it with my daughter, who the kids get it for free. So I'm like, well, what do we have to lose, right? It's not going to hurt, and it just might help. But one of the caveats to them getting it for free is that the adult sponsors. So the adult takes it and the child takes it. And so our whole family was eating these fruits and vegetables in a capsule. And about 4 weeks into it, I'm sitting at my desk charting, and I didn't have any pain in my hands. And that was crazy to me because I hurt all over, and my hands were my first symptoms of the rheumatoid arthritis. And they always hurt. So it was just my normal. And, I thought I ate well. I did not exercise because my whole body hurt. I couldn't even imagine doing that. But that was the catalyst for me. It was that, what in the world is in these capsules of food that no doctor, medicine, or therapy had ever done? And that was take away my pain.
So Callie, how did you hear about these capsules?
Well, Juice Plus is a direct marketing. So I was actually in Toastmasters and had seen a presentation on it. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. And then I was just like, it's expensive. I can't afford that, whatever. I just kind of dismissed it. And then I was also in a women's health networking because of my business. And so I later learned, I learned about him again, and she actually ended up being my business partner, and because it changed my life. So I heard about it just through a presentation, and then I heard about it again, and it was presented with the Children's Health Study. And I just think it's one of those. It was a God wink for me to say, okay, this is what you're looking for, something you don't know what it is, and that's what found me. And it was the catalyst into a full-on nutrition nerd. I mean, I just went headlong into this nutritional healing and food as medicine, and every workshop or conference or book or podcast I could get my hands on, I was just insatiably learning about why nutrition heals at the cellular level. And understand, Adrienne, that I have a master's degree in science, and I had been working in a hospital. I've worked the entire continuum from acute care in crisis trauma hospital all the way out to home health. So I'm very, very ingrained in the Western healing, and that was all I knew. And so this totally blew my mind and my beliefs and my understanding completely out of the water.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, how, we go to the doctor and when we're sick, but doctors don't tell us about nutrition or food. They just don't.
Yeah. So that was the beginning of the journey. And at that point, that had healed my rheumatoid arthritis, right? And so I realized I just went into this this new lifestyle. It broke the cycle of negative healing for me, or negative health for me. And I started to have energy. I started to feel amazing. I lost 70 pounds. Everybody was saying I looked 20 years younger. In fact, a funny story. My son and I went to a conference on the East Coast, and we were traveling together, him and I, and we were meeting some people that he was taking me back to where he had lived for a bit. And when he introduced me, they thought I was his wife. And then we went to a conference, and they kept referring to us as Mr. and Mrs. And he was so mortified. And this is my son, and they thought he was my husband because I looked so much younger.
Wow.
And I said, he said, Mom, you have got to stop looking so young. And I said, Christopher, you need to shave, because he had a beard. And so he looked older and I looked younger. And so, it was a physical change to my entire being from that food and that change in my lifestyle.
So, so you first started taking these capsules from this company. Now, I'm assuming they had vitamins and minerals,
No.
So what were they exactly?
Juice Plus is just fruits and vegetables in a capsule. So it's 30 different, they've got 3 different varieties. There's what they call the fruits, the berries, and the veggies. So red, green, and purple. They also do now have Omega Blend, but it's not even labeled as supplement. It's labeled as food, because that's all it is. It's just food. So it's pretty amazing. And like I said, it completely changed my life. I still continue. People still ask me, do you still take it? Because it's now been, I started in 2011. So I think last year was my.
So 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do still take it. It's part of it. It's my medicine cabinet looks completely different than it did at that point, right? There's nothing in my medicine cabinet now but Juice Plus and essential oils. Maybe a Tylenol. My husband has an aspirin allergy, so our pain reliever of choice is Tylenol. And yeah, I think that's about all that's in our medicine, because it's just, yeah.
How did your diet change too? And how did you learn about diet?
Well, so at that point, that's where it started with my understanding nutritional healing. And so I was learning all about the power of plants. It really became about plants. And so I started with some cleanses, the elimination diet, to figure out what I was sensitive to and what I was not. I really didn't change at that point. I really didn't change my diet significantly, other than No, as I think about it, a lot of the real, what I would call now radical changes that I had done to my diet, I went into more clean foods. So I was more aware. I really cut out processed foods, but I probably didn't do my elimination diet until closer to my other diagnosis. So I was feeling amazing, but I still would have these infections and I would just flare up. And the doctors treated it as colonized staph because I'd been in healthcare for so long. And so they just said, oh yeah, it's just, kind of part of the deal. And so what would happen is this time of year, when the seasons would change, my sinuses would drain. And as they would drain, there would be, you start to chap and your skin gets a little bit compromised. And so then staph is opportunistic and it would just overgrow. And so then they would treat it. And then I would have antibiotics, and that would lead to yeast infections and fungal overgrowth. And just all of this stuff was going on. And so the doctors would I was in that negative health cycle. And I still, at the time, I didn't realize it because I felt so amazing. I was working out and I didn't have pain and I had lost weight. So to me, I felt amazing. But then I had this inflammation in my mouth. And that was really bizarre. And I hadn't had anything like it. I had these white lines, and I'm a speech language pathologist, so I'm familiar with mouths, and I'd never seen anything like that. My daughter was in school for a dental assistant, and she hadn't seen anything like that in her textbooks, hadn't learned about it from the dentistry side. And so, we did what every other American does. We went to Dr. Google and found a diagnosis that matched the symptoms. And I'm like, oh, I've got oral lichen planus. And it said to get a diagnosis from a dentist or a dermatologist. And there was no way I was going to go to a dentist with my mouth hurting the way it did. But I needed a diagnosis so I could get the medications, right? Because again, that's what we do. So at this point, I had the nutritional healing, but I still had this outbreak. And so I went to the dermatologist, and she looked at me after doing the exam and interviewing me. And she said, I think you have lupus. And I said, you're crazy. You must not have heard me, because I feel better than I've ever felt in my entire adult life. And I have energy. I've lost weight. I feel amazing. And I eat like this and I exercise like that. And she said, well, okay, I still think you have lupus. And so let's, you have this lesion on your head that you said hasn't been healing. Let's take a biopsy of it and see, and I'm like, well, I'm a fair redhead and there's skin cancer in our family. So let's go ahead and do that. So she took the biopsy, sent it off. And when I went back into the office, she said, you have oral lichen planus and systemic lupus erythematosus coexisting. And I'm like, what does that mean? And she said, well, there are autoimmune diseases, and autoimmune diseases travel in packs. So you have these, and you may have more. And what we do is super antibiotics and steroids and chemo medications, and they'll calm down the symptoms, but they, it won't take it away. You'll have it forever. And I'm sitting there going, what? I don't know. I don't believe that's to be true. And honestly, I'm familiar with those medications. I have patients on those medications. I have family members on those medications, and they're toxic. And the one thing I've learned in the last 3 years, so actually, I guess 2011 is when I got my lupus diagnosis. So I actually started Juice Plus in 3 years prior to that. So 2008. Yeah, because my daughter was 3. So 2008 was when I actually had my nutrition light bulb go off. And then 2011 was when I got the dual diagnosis for oral lichen planus and systemic lupus. And the treatment for the oral lichen planus is what they call miracle mouthwash. And it is this cocktail of nastiness that basically numbs your mouth that they give to AIDS patients when they have these similar kinds of mouth sores. Wow. So I'm leaving her doctor's office with this miracle mouthwash prescription for HIV and AIDS patients and a diagnosis of lupus. And I'm like, what just happened? So I realized that there was more to it than just food, because I had my food dialed in and I felt amazing, but clearly my body was still in this, something else was
Unbalanced state, right?
yeah,
You were,
yeah,
yeah.
something was going on. So at that point, I sold my private practice, and did the deep dive into taking the layers off the onion and figuring out what was going on. I respectfully declined all the medicine that she gave me, other than the miracle mouthwash. I did do that to calm that acute flare, um, and had to do it for several different occasions over the years as I went through that transformation. So what I learned was that it wasn't just the food was the foundation. I wouldn't have been able to take the layers off in the chronic pain that I was in. Also, by that time, rheumatoid arthritis had been moved from the degenerative disease bucket to the autoimmune bucket. So I now had 3 autoimmune diseases. And I thought, and that was one of my first thoughts when I started researching on lupus and the symptoms. I thought, well, maybe I really don't have rheumatoid arthritis. Maybe it's just all been lupus all this time. But they're very different. And so now living with them and understanding them, they feel very different. And I know when one is talking to me versus the other. But long story short, what happened was about 5 years. It was about 5 years. I call it my transformation. And that health transformation really, it took more than just the nutrition. It's also about our mindset. It's also about our spirit, our faith, our beliefs, the supplements, understanding how to use supplements to support your body. Energy, there's so many different pieces that go into it. And so the whole time I'm in this transformation and going against medical advice, honestly, and kind of kicking against the system that I work in and that I live in, I actually left healthcare altogether because I just realized it was toxic for me. And I started to understand how much energy affects our health. And it's this nebulous, like, kind of woo-woo thing, right? But it's real, whether we want to accept it as real or not. So I wrote a book, 8 Lessons Lupus Taught Me, about the journey. And I really wrote it as a message of hope, because I thought when I had that diagnosis and I came home from the doctor with this cocktail and this diagnosis, it was really scary. And I had friends and family members who had lupus. So I was familiar with it. And I knew that their quality of life was not what I wanted. And I just thought, there's got to be a better way. So then when I got to the end, and I even had, natural doctors who told me that I couldn't beat it. And so there was no one ever that said, you've got this. There is a better way. No one ever in that whole time, even in my Juice Plus world, which, is all about nutritional healing and about your body. But they all supported it, and they all gave me the go get 'em girl, but there was never a realistic that can happen. You're always going to have this poor quality of life, was kind of the message. And those medications are so necessary to manage it, because what they do is they suppress the immune system. So then, it manages your symptoms. But what I learned was I need my immune system, and I love my immune system. So I wrote the book as that message of hope, because I thought, other people are like me. I know there's other people out there searching, and they need to know that there is a better way. There is a different way that you can have. So I wrote the book, and then quickly realized, well, it doesn't do anything if nobody knows about it. So I started to promote it and do the Change Your Story presentation. And again, because I had my Juice Plus network, they really supported me in giving me a platform to be able to share that message. So I traveled all over the Pacific Northwest and the mountain region mostly. And then we decided, hey, let's take this to the all 50 states. And so we decided to come up with the 50 and 50, which was our book tour. The year my husband and I turned 50, we were going to go to all 50 states to share this message of hope. Well, about 2 weeks from our third leg of the trip, which was our southern route, COVID happened. And so we got shut down. We couldn't travel. We couldn't congregate. We couldn't do presentations at all. And honestly, I just really, I lost everything I knew. I went right back into the old patterns of living sad, which the standard American diet and lifestyle. And I didn't at that point really appreciate how far I had come. I mean, I knew I did, and but I guess I kind of felt a little bit bulletproof maybe. And it's like, here, this is the amazing outcome you can have. And these are the lessons I learned, and then you apply them. And I just kind of handed it over. And one of the things that during that time when COVID happened, I gained the weight and then the pains came, I had flares that I hadn't had in 10 years that came back within months after COVID, just because I was living sad and in, fear, we were told. And I don't know how that landed for you, Adrienne, but, we were told that we were a high risk community and that, if we got COVID, we would die. And my whole family was like, Mom can't get COVID. There was this huge fear and out of our routine, out of the things that we were normally doing. So I really kind of slid back and then realized when I came to my senses about 3 months later, I was like, hold on a second. CallyRae, this is not acceptable to hurt, to gain weight, to feel like this, to have these flares, the exhaustion, the brain fog, all that stuff. It just wasn't okay. And so I read my book again. I
read your book that you wrote.
I literally reread my own book, and it inspired me, and it reminded me of what I knew, the truths that I had learned, that that whole narrative of our culture during COVID was counter. And I was just like, no, just like I had to stand up against the doctors and say, no, I know that I trust my body and I can heal in my first transformation. Now I call that my second transformation. The good news is instead of 5 years, it only took about 5 months, a little bit less than that. So I came out of that with a different mindset. And that's kind of what led me to where I am now with the Living Wow, because we were vlogging all of the 50 and 50 travels, we were vlogging. So then when we got shut down, we had familiarity with that platform and we already had a YouTube channel. I didn't do anything during that time because again, I just felt like, how can I tell the world that it's okay to thrive with autoimmune diseases when the entire world was just trying to survive with COVID? So I just felt like it was the timing. I couldn't share a narrative of thriving. And personally, I wasn't thriving. I was back to surviving. So what a hypocrite, I just couldn't do that. So after I came out of it, we did finish the last two legs of the tour. So we did do the 50 and 50. It just was the 50 and 52. We didn't get it done it took, we started it in, it would have been 18. No, we started it in 19 and we finished it in 21. So,
okay, so I feel like I'm missing a piece here, meaning, so you healed yourself with food in the beginning, right?
Yep.
And
that was before my diagnosis.
Right. But then you still had some symptoms that came back.
Yeah.
So what did you realize or what did you do to then heal yourself fully the first time, before they all came back?
Well, that's what's in the 8 lessons. So that's where it comes. Now I'm recognizing, like I said, it was the deep dive, understanding how my fear and scarcity, my belief systems, how those things, how stress triggers, understanding my energy and realizing how much negative energy I was picking up when I was in these crises moments with my patients. And, I'm just being empathetic and caring. I didn't realize I'm actually
carrying
taking
it,
that on.
right?
Yeah, I'm actually like carrying that around. So all those kinds of lessons, and that's what I have broken down. There's 8 of them. Now there's more, and hence there's a new book coming out. But that's what the difference was I realized at that time it wasn't just the nutrition, but it was the lifestyle. But I didn't really have at that point, I didn't really have the lifestyle. Like I knew it, but I feel like there's a couple of things, and I think, Adrienne, in your health coaching education, you had a similar as I did, which is the bio-individuality, that it's really important. One diet does not fit all. And so everybody says, well,
Correct.
what food do you eat? And I'm like, well, I eat a whole food plant-based diet, but some people can't do any gluten. I can, some people can't do any. Right now, I'm back on a elimination diet right now, where I'm not doing any, I never do any processed food. That was one of the things that came out of it, was really understanding, but that's with the food piece of it. But it changes. It changes as the season of our life changes. So even, like I said, at one point right now, I'm doing another kind of cleanse and figuring things out, because my body's changed. I also, during that time, went through menopause. So my body's different than it was 15 years ago when I started this journey. And so understanding that. So I had a lot of hesitation in trying to say, my way is your way, because it's not. It really is a guidebook and a way to kind of a filter or a lens in the way you filter your choices, and then make that choice that's right for you. So that's how living WOW. So it's WOW. It's the antithesis of SAD. And that's what came out of the second transformation. After finishing up the book tour, which was more hope sessions, I realized that I needed to actually give the tools, not just the hope. So the first transformation brought about the hope and the belief that you can heal your autoimmune diseases. You can reverse them. I still have them, but I view them differently. They are, I call them the indicator lights. So I can tell, and I'm blessed, and I love them, because now they keep me on course. So if I stop to make those, not everybody has those. I lost my dad when I was 16, and he died of a massive heart attack. No symptoms, no cardiac history, anything other than in his family. But, he didn't have indicator lights like I do. So I feel really blessed that I can adjust based on how because I'm in tune enough with my body to recognize what it means. And the reason I'm in tune with my body is because I've learned to listen to it and understand the language that it's speaking to me in, rather than masking it with medications or covering those to get rid of a symptom. A symptom is communication from our body. And I say that, your body is an outward manifestation of what's happening inside. So if my stress is out of balance, if my mindset is buying into all the fear mongering, right?
Yep.
Those kinds of things affect our health. And we just don't, they say, oh, we're getting older. Aches and pains are normal. Degeneration is normal. And I just say, BS, people. No. And it's the same thing. You have an autoimmune disease. Oh, you're going to have brain fog. You're going to have no energy. You're going to feel horrible because you have an autoimmune disease. And so it's like this label that's put on us. And I just say, no, that's not the case. Our bodies are designed to heal if you give them the environment to do so. And you don't need a label to be the expert in your body. And 80% of lifestyle or lifestyle actually can heal or reverse 80% of diseases in our world today. Now, that's not my study, that's research. And that's even on the conservative side. I've heard some studies say as high as 90+% of diseases can be eliminated or reversed with lifestyle. So I went about developing the WOW lifestyle. And so it's 8 different systems. And I just think of them as systems, just like we have our bone, we have circulatory system, respiratory system. That's how what we call them in Western medicine, is all the systems of our physical body. So the WOW lifestyle are systems of our lifestyle. Some of them are of our body and some of them are of our environment. But they're the things that factor in. And so when we go to the doctor and we give them symptoms, they just hear our symptoms and give us a medication to mask those symptoms. They don't ask, well, what's happened in your life in the last 2 weeks?
Right. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Like I think of healing as mind, body, spirit.
For
You
sure.
got the food for the body, you got the exercise for the body, right?
Yep.
And then your spirit could be spirituality. It could be, your positivity, how you live your life, how you treat others, how you serve others, right?
Yep.
And your mind is really your belief system. Do you believe you can heal? How do you think about your family and your friends, and how do you treat them, and how do you think about the world? Like, don't live in fear, because fear, I think, can cause illness too, right? I mean, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. So what I actually came to believe with myself was I realized, and this was a huge part when you say, what was it that happened with the first transformation? I realized that my body was in dis-ease because it was fighting against itself. So I was living this life as a professional, building my business and doing well. In the terms of the sad life, with that as a measurement, I was successful and I was climbing the corporate ladder. I had climbed it in the medical, and then I had my own business, right? I mean, that's like what every private practice and therapist, that's like the top. And but I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, and I really wanted to be, I'm a hyper fun, loud person, and I, needed to be buttoned up and professional all the time. And so I had this disconnect between who my spirit was telling me I was born to be and who the world had put upon me that I needed to be. So I had this disconnect, and I really believe that my autoimmune disease, the body attacking itself, I was so thick-headed and so tied up and busy in my American lifestyle,
Day-to-day life, right?
that I didn't even hear the whispers of the spirit saying, you're off course. You're off course. And so it wasn't until I got shut down in my body to say, okay, I'm off course. I need to do some course correction. And so for me, that spirit, I think of it as my body is that outward manifestation of what's happening inside. I use an analogy for Living Wow of a journey and a vehicle. And so the different components, and the mind is the navigator, right? And, or it's the driver, I'm sorry, the driver. The spirit is the navigator. The mind is the driver. And if we don't have the faith to trust the navigator, then the driver's going to take us wherever it's told to go, right? So that connection and understanding and trusting your voice of truth, your spirit, trusting that and knowing that is key, I think. So you can't separate out health and disregard the lifestyle and the components of the lifestyle. And I think a lot of times people think of lifestyle as, how much money they're making or, what fashion they're wearing. But we're talking about lifestyle, as you said, the spirit, the mind, the body, the energy, the environment too. Where do you
fit in?
Yeah. What do you allow what are the relationships like? How are you treating yourself? How are others treating you? How are you treating them? Like you said, there's so much to it. So that's where I'm at now. And why I felt like when we do the Change Your Story, they say, okay, now I understand that I can do it, but how? And I was like, well, it's individual to you. But as I realized, it is individual to you, but the framework is universal. And so the framework is what I developed. And that's what the new book is about.
I love that. Okay, so when is the new book going to come out, do you think?
It'll be early 2025. So it should be coming out. It's going to the publisher here in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So it'll all be dictated then to know an actual release date. But it'll be out early 2025.
Cool. Now, is there anything else you want to add? I did mention that you have a podcast.
Yeah.
Right?
So the podcast is Living Wow Out Loud. And it really is my gift. It's really, I would love to.
It's your service to the world.
It is. It's, I took some time off from it and thought, I don't have this huge listener base. So is it really making a difference? And I took a little bit of time off, and my daughter was in her senior year of high school, and 3 months was what I planned to take off. And I took off 1.5 years. And so it's really easy at that point to kind of dip out and go, nobody even cares. I'm out. And I went in and looked at the analytics, Adrienne, and you'll be able to appreciate this from your summit, I think. I was not all over the world. There are people who listen to the podcast all over the world. And I had as many listeners 1.5 years later than I did when I was putting out daily episodes or weekly episodes. And so I had that conviction. It was like, okay, yeah, I hear this. This is something that's been put upon my heart that I need to get back on the platform, and I need to do this. So, I've scaled it back a little bit, but there's plenty of content on there. And it takes you through the different systems of the Living Wow framework. And it really is that hope in Living Wow, but it's also the how in Living Wow. And so I hope, in fact, Adrienne was a guest on the podcast for Thriving with Multiple Sclerosis. So yeah, thanks for that. And yeah, check it out. I think I get a lot of really good feedback on it, and it's a lot of fun to do. I love it. It's my
That's so great, because yeah, you never know when you put something out like that, you don't know how many people you're positively affecting. I mean, there's a lot of people that need help, and you have no idea how many people you really are helping. So it's such a great thing. Thank you for doing it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great interview. Is there anything else before we end that you want to, a message you want to send out?
I would just say, please don't lose hope. I think that is the biggest thing, that it is individual. And so a lot of times I feel like we feel isolated. Again, I was just listening to a podcast yesterday about how chronic disease is just not managed well in Western medicine, in allopathic care. And so there's a lot of healing modalities. We do that on the podcast as well. I introduce different modalities and different tools that you can use in making your lifestyle choices, but it's really about intentional choices and living on purpose, and not just because it's what the standard American diet is doing or lifestyle. But yeah, you can go to the CallyRae.com. That's CallyRae. It's a different spelling, all one word. And so you can go there and find all of the current, where we're at, what we're doing, when the books are out, who's on the podcast, all those kinds of things can be found on there. I'm also on all the different socials. So you can find those links. Just search at livingwow.com.
Thanks, Callie. I'm going to have all of that information underneath this video. So if people want to reach out to you, they can. So Fantastic. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You have given out so much just great information that's going to help a lot of people. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.